Hello everyone, my name is Caleb Hohenshaw. I am the Director of Education for Fayetteville Public Television, and I just wanted to go ahead and make an Intro to Resolve tutorial in the same way that we did the basic editing tutorial. I just wanted to go ahead and offer the Intro to Resolve class online as well. So without further ado, I have DaVinci pulled up here, and we're going to get right into it. So starting it up here, I have my splash screen. It's okay if you don't see your databases right here. If you don't know already, your databases are basically where your projects are going to be saved. So I have two different locations for where my projects are saved. This one is on my current hard drive, and this one is on an external SSD drive. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and double click on Untitled Project. It doesn't even ask me for a name for that. And then, as we covered a little bit in the basic editing class, DaVinci actually works in different workspaces. So you have a bunch of different workspaces that you can use depending on what your needs might be. So for instance, down here, this one is the Media Acquisition tab. I have the Cut page, which is the one that we covered in the basic editing class. I also have the Edit page, which that's what we're going to be using for the most part for this class. And then I have Fusion for video effects type work. I have the Color page, which is really good for color grading and all that kind of thing. The Fairlight tab for any audio needs you might have, and then the Delivery page. But let's go ahead and go over here to the Edit page. Up here you'll see it's pretty familiar actually. You'll see the media pool up here. This is where we're going to aggregate all of our clips into. We have just one timeline now instead of the two timelines. So we have the top timeline and the bottom timeline for the Cut page. We also have the Inspector up here to the top right, and that is actually where we can adjust all of our parameters for each of our clips. And then right here in the middle we have the preview or the program window depending on what we're going to be looking at. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and just grab some footage here. Some wonderful footage of a trip that I took to Tulsa with my wonderful girlfriend Kaylee. And so I just drug all this footage in here, and that's pretty much the workflow that I usually use is just bouncing over here to a File Explorer window, or if you're on a Mac it would just be a Finder window, and then just dragging and dropping. You can also right click and do an add bin if you want to, so I can make a bin. So if I had like different scenes, so if I had like different scenes, this would be scene 1. I could do another bin if I wanted to, and this would be scene 2, and so on and so forth. You can also group them by days and all that kind of stuff. I don't think I really need them right now. What I am going to do is apply a look to all of this footage really quick, because you'll notice that it is very flat. It's kind of ugly looking right now. So I have... and now we have some nicer looking footage. So moving on, the Edit page really does operate quite like the Cut page does. If I bounce over to the Cut page, you can see it here. What's really nice about all this is if you did want to kind of create the general structure for your video in the Cut page, and then you can bounce over to the Edit page, that's a very easy thing to do. And I, in fact, do that sometimes because the Cut page is a little bit more simplistic and it is a little bit faster, whereas the Edit page actually has just more functionality in general. So it has like better tools to work with. It's a little bit more streamlined, I would say, and a little bit more well polished. So that being said, if I wanted to, I could double click here, and we're going to use kind of the same techniques that we talked about. So if I wanted to start my clip right here, I can just click and drag toward my playhead, and now I have a nice kind of rack focus in. And this is all slow motion footage, by the way, so if it seems a little bit slower, that would be the reason why. I'm going to use my O key on my keyboard for the out point, and maybe tighten this up just a little bit with my I key. And if you remember from the basic editing class, the I key stands for in and O key stands for out. Looks pretty nice so far. Let's go ahead and grab another clip or two. I think there is this one's pretty cool, yeah. So I have like just this clip of this building here. And again, this is all in slow-mo, so I can really kind of build this pretty quick. Let's see, I just want to find the stable parts. And as you might have guessed, just to reiterate a little bit from the basic editing class, all I'm doing is just picking and choosing the parts of the clip that I actually want to use. So I do still have all of the clip there. I can always recover the rest of the clip back out, but I'm just kind of being selective with what I want to actually put into my timeline. But yeah, this one was a pretty good one. So she stands and looks. Tulsa's really pretty, like especially this area of Tulsa is very pretty. During like the sunset hours of the day. So I'll do that, and I'm just setting my eye on my O points with my keyboard, and then I'll just stack them directly next to one another. So this is what we have. And there we go. It'll save the project for me. And like I said, it will automatically save to that database that we talked about just a bit earlier. Also, if you do want to switch between projects, it's very easy to do in DaVinci Resolve. You just go down here to the bottom most portion, to this little home button, and then you have all of your different projects here, as well as your databases. You can create new databases. I don't think I mentioned that earlier, but you can create new databases wherever you would like to. I'm going to close out of this. So this is looking pretty good right here. Let me find a couple more clips here. This one's pretty fun. I really liked this. This is probably my favorite shot from the shoot here. And then also I loved this one, the Ford car. I love old cars, and again, all I'm doing is just I and O key for in and my out points, and then I'm just going to pop these in. Let's get one more of Kaylee. There was a couple really, really good ones, I remember. Yeah, so this one is really, really nice. So I'll do I for in and O for out. There we go. Just kind of stack that into my timeline, and then I remember there was one more that I really, really liked. Yeah, it was this one right here. So I have this one. I love this clip. And I don't think I need to change the endpoint of this at all. It looks pretty good where it's at. So yeah, let's spacebar to pause it right there, and then O key for out, and then click and drag it right there. So now that I have actually built my rough sequence in the cut page, I can just bounce on over to the edit page really, really easy. So let's go ahead and do that just by clicking my edit right there. And then if I scroll back here, and kind of zoom in, and sorry it was really, really squashed down. But now I have all of my clips kind of built out for me. So I use the cut page a lot for just kind of clicking and dragging clips in, kind of selecting the ones that I know I'm going to want, and placing those into my timeline. And then I use the edit page for actually doing a lot of the more minute, like fine detail adjustments. But just going over the interface just really quick, again, I always like to reiterate things. We have the media pool. So if I can collapse this all the way, that's a little bit different than in the cut page. So back here in the cut page, we could not collapse the media pool. This tab was always open, and we could switch it between the transitions, titles, effects, and the media pool. So this is a little bit different, but we can collapse this all the way. And you'll notice also that we do have two screens here. So this one is reflecting what is on our timeline, and this one is reflecting what is on our preview. So, and what I mean by preview is basically if I double click a clip right here, and then just play through it. It's not in my timeline, I'm just previewing it, and then I can do the exact same like in and out points if I wanted to. So let's just click and drag that one down in there. So that's the preview window, and then the program window is going to be reflecting whatever is on my timeline. So that's kind of the distinction there. It is nice having both of these open. We also have our effects library right here. So I have titles, generators, different effects like blurs, and all that kind of crazy stuff. We have all the different titles that we had in the cut page. They are also in here. The effects library is also where DaVinci keeps hold of its video transitions. So if I bump over here, we have a cross dissolve, smooth cuts, all different kinds of things. We also have several audio transitions. This is another way that this interface differs a little bit from the cut page that we covered in basic editing, because you'll notice that now we do have video tracks and separate audio tracks too. So video is always on top, and audio is always on the bottom, whereas over here we did not have any separate audio controls really to speak of. Over here we do have different audio tracks, and we'll get into how to work with those in just a bit. But moving on to the timeline, it is pretty similar to the cut page. Really the main difference is what I was just talking about with the audio on the bottom and the video on top. Whereas the cut page doesn't give you any audio clips to work with, the edit page gives you them pretty much as you want to work with them, you can. I'm going to I think I have a song in here, yeah. So I'm just going to pop this song, and this is just a WAV file. It also works with MP3s, pretty much any type of audio files. I have not run into an audio file that it hasn't used. So I can preview this. Sounds sounds pretty cool. Nice and tranquil music, I would say. We can use our same type of in and out point markers to select the portions of the song that we actually want to use. So let's go ahead and do that. I do like the beginning of it. It's a nice fade in, but let's just say maybe like right here, I'm just using my keystrokes to kind of scrub around pretty quickly. I'm just going to put my out point right there, and then whenever I drag this in, it's only going to be dragging in that portion. So it works exactly like video does in that regard. But you'll notice now I have music down here at the bottom, and I can expand these audio tracks out if I want to, just by clicking and dragging. I don't think I really need these, so I'm going to leave these kind of collapsed up. So let's go ahead and just expand this out to maybe the length of our song. A really cool little feature that I like about DaVinci is these little tabs on the end of clips right here. These are automatic fade ins and fade outs. And I don't know why, I just really like them. It's one of those things that I didn't even notice it was there until maybe like a year later of working with DaVinci, but I really like them. So if I just click and drag this, it will actually fade it out for me. Same thing with video right here, so I can fade my video out right there. Then my video is going to fade out a little bit later. All right, so this is looking pretty good so far. I think I'm actually going to give myself a little bit of room on the front end of this, so I just want some black space. So I'm just going to click and drag a box and then move all these back. And if I play this, I have a little bit of room for a title on the front end. Let's go ahead and move this back a little bit more. And I think I also will, whoops, don't want to do that. I think I also will fade this in, so now we have a really good spot for a title to start happening. Let's go ahead and do that. I am going to go to the effects library, to titles, and I usually just use the regular text object. Sometimes I find the text plus is kind of cool too. But yeah, I'm just going to drag that in, zoom in a little bit, give it a couple fades, and maybe expand it just a hair. So there it is. Of course, we need to edit what the text actually is, and this is where the inspector tab comes into play. So up until now, we've covered the media pool, the effects, and all that kind of good stuff. We've covered the timeline, the differentiation between the video and audio tracks, but what we haven't covered is the inspector. So if I go up here and click on inspector, whatever clip I am selected on, and that includes both audio, video, pictures, audio, video, pictures. So all the inspector is really doing is just reflecting whatever I am selected on down in my timeline, and that can be pretty much anything in your timeline. It can be a picture, it can be a video clip, it can be audio clips, it can also be text. So if I select on my text layer right here, you'll see it brings us up into the inspector. I can just rename this to Tulsa with Kaylee. Oops, capitalize her name. There we go. And then of course we have different fonts and everything. So I don't know, just I'm always the worst at picking fonts. Nah, that doesn't look good. I don't like the bold. I'll just use the normal for this. But you kind of get the point. There are tons of different fonts that you can choose from. You also have color options. And then on down here, we do have the same drop shadow, stroke, and background options that the cut page has available as well. And again, these are always really good to use if you have white text on a white background or black text on a black background. So just keep that in mind, that the background and the drop shadow are really good things to have available to you. If we switch over to this tab, this is our video tab. This allows us to do a lot of cool things. And the video tab basically allows us to just move it around if we wanted to. So we have zoom, we have position, we have rotation, we have different things like pitch and yaw. We can flip this horizontally if we want to, or flip it vertically, which I don't really know why you'd want to do that with text, but it's, hey, I guess it's there if you wanted to. But zoom is pretty standard, so I can just click and drag on my zoom and make it bigger or smaller. Now you might be saying, why do we need that? We can already control the size of the text itself, and that's a great point. This is basically just another way to do kind of the same thing. You can also control the position, so this is your X position, so on your horizontal axis, and then also your Y position on your vertical axis. So you have those two available as well. If we go over to a clip, so let's just do, let's do this clip. This one looks pretty good. Let's click on this one. Now we have both video and audio attributes that we can kind of manipulate. And I don't really think I want to do anything with the audio on this clip because it was all pretty much just scratch audio from the camera. This was just a bunch of B-roll that I was wanting to shoot. So I'm going to leave audio alone for now. I'm going to go over to video. And of course we have opacity, so we can control the transparency of it. That was also covered in the basic editing class. And then of course we have zoom, we have position, we have rotation, and all this kind of good stuff. If you ever get lost and kind of wind up with your footage looking really weird, you can always come up here and hit this reset all button, or you can reset each parameter one at a time. In addition, of course, we also have the flip tool, which is kind of cool. You can flip it upside down or left to right or vice versa. If I open my cropping settings, we also have cropping, so I can just crop this however much I want. This is really great if you're shooting stuff that's going to be put on Instagram, so you can crop it down to actually fit what Instagram has laid out as their resolutions that they kind of like to display, essentially. There's also video stabilization built in, and all I'm doing to open and close these is just double clicking up here on the title. So stabilize, this one, I don't know, like, I don't really think this one needs much stabilization, but if I see another clip on down the line when we're still doing this video, I'll go ahead and stabilize it and show you kind of how it works, but it's pretty easy. I might actually do a separate tutorial just for video stabilization itself. We also have retiming and scaling, so you can slow things down or speed them up. You can also scale footage down. So for instance, this is 6K footage that we can scale down, and we can use different algorithms that the computer can put together for us to scale it down in certain ways. So that is the inspector. Let's come on back down here to our timeline. So right now we do not have any transitions or anything like that. Transitions, just to show you how they work, are pretty simple. I just have to go to my effects libraries, video transitions, and then yeah, cross dissolve is great. I'm just going to click and drag across dissolve, and you can of course see that it's giving me a cool like just visual representation of what's happening there. And of course so that is a pretty standard cross dissolve right there. And of course I can click and drag this to be a longer cross dissolve or a shorter cross dissolve depending on what is needed. And basically all the transitions in DaVinci operate pretty much identically to that, I would say. I mean, they just vary in kind of what they do, but normally you just click and drag them down onto your clips and it takes care of the rest for you. To go a little bit deeper into the timeline, it's pretty simplistic in the way it operates. You have a lock mechanism right here, so if I click that padlock button, I now can no longer select anything on the tracks. You'll notice that it did move the audio associated with that just a little bit, and that was because I did not have the audio track locked as well. And I can lock audio tracks too if I want to, just by expanding it down, and then it gives me the padlock, and it kind of grays it out for me, showing me that I cannot move anything, basically. Also, we have the mute button for both audio and video. So here we have the M button, so that will mute every audio track that is on this A1 track. Same thing with video here. I have the V1, video 1 track, and I can mute everything that is on that track. So now I'm not seeing anything, but you will notice if I just drag this clip up, now I can see it because I have moved it from video track 1 onto audio track 1. And I'm going to undo that really quick. By the way, in case you are unfamiliar, the undo function for pretty much any program in Windows and Mac is Control-Z, or on Mac it would be Command-Z, and that extends into this program as well. So if you ever mess up, you can go up to your Edit and then Undo, or you can just click Control-Z on your keyboard, and that will fix. Or you can click Control-Z on your keyboard, and that will step you back one step in your process. So the last thing I want to get into is basically just diving a little bit deeper into the timeline and some of these buttons up here. You might have seen these and wondered what they were. I am going to go over some of them and then not cover others. I'll probably cover the others in different tutorials themselves because some of them are a little bit denser in what they do and how they operate. So I'll just be covering the ones that I think are applicable to this class, and then the other ones I will do a separate tutorial for. Also, if you are looking at the PDF, you should be able to find it in the link in the description. But if you're looking at the Intro to Resolve PDF, it does list the functionality of all of these buttons right here. So starting over here on the right, I'm going to go ahead and turn my video and audio on. Actually, I'm going to leave my audio off, I think, and kind of squish it up here. Let's go ahead. I do have a little bit of a black space in between these two clips, so I don't really want that. So a couple different ways I can remedy this. I can just click and drag, of course, or I can click here, right click, and then ripple delete, and that will ripple everything backwards, which is a nice little feature. Same thing here, so if I click, ripple delete, boom. And I think I would like to go ahead and extend this audio out a little bit more just to kind of cover up where all the video is. Alright, so that's... Alright, so that is looking pretty good. Really quick, on my audio tracks, DaVinci makes this very, very easy. So this audio is really loud right now, and I don't think I want it that loud. I do want to kind of bring the decibel level down just a bit. So if I zoom in here, you'll notice I have this line right here. Now if I click and drag this down, it's going to show me how many decibels I'm subtracting from that. So now I have something that's not... So now I have something that's not too loud for my audience. And you can always reference over here. These are your decibel meters. So this is for track 1, this is for track 2, and then this is your main track output. So if I play this, you'll notice that it's in the red just a little bit. So maybe I do need to bring it down just a bit more. Still just a little bit in the red. That's probably pretty good right there. A little red is not terrible. It's good to kind of have your audio somewhere between the green and like in the yellow region. And if I play it again, just look for this yellow region right here. So that is usually where you want your audio to bounce around. That's the decibel reading right there. That's usually where you want your audio to bounce around if you want it to be heard by everybody in your audience. So now that we've covered that, let's go ahead and get into a bunch of these tools up here. So the one that I have been using, and I've actually not been clicking it, but this is just the Subtractive View or Add View, and I'm not really doing any editing with these two buttons. I'm just zooming into my timeline. Moving forward, we have this guy right here. So this is our timeline view options. So this one should always be on, but this one sometimes is not. This is our audio waveform. So if I click this, I can now see my audio waveforms on my actual audio track, and that is pretty much invaluable because whenever you're editing, say maybe an interview or even a montage video like this, you want to know where your audio like peaks and you want to know where your audio dips down low. And that's very useful for people's voices, but also just for the music that I have here as well, because I can see the beats actually physically in the music. So if I click this right here, this is a non-rectified audio waveform. So if I click that, you can kind of see it looks a little bit different now. And then I usually like selecting this as well because that justifies it to the center of the audio waveform bar. But coming back up here to my timeline view options, this stacked timeline is a really, really good feature to have. And this is one that DaVinci didn't have until maybe like 2 years ago, I would say. But stacked timelines are really, really interesting. So this is the way they basically work. So I turned it on, and now you'll see that I have a tab that is named Timeline 1. If I go back to my media pool, you can see right here I have Timeline 1, and this Timeline 1 basically encapsulates everything that I have done so far. So all of my transitions, all of my text on the front, that is all there. If I did want to do another timeline though, that's very, very simple. I can just select this plus button right here and then start dragging clips into this timeline. And I'm just clicking and dragging them really, really quick, not really doing any type of detail editing work here. But basically now I have two separate timelines, and I can export those timelines as different videos. But the really cool thing about this is I can just dynamically switch back and forth between timelines. And this is really, really useful because let's say you're editing a short film or maybe like a commercial or something like that, and you have several scenes, or maybe you have several days worth of footage. You can make a timeline for each and every day or each and every scene, and then you can copy and paste adjustments from those different timelines into your master timeline. So for instance here, if I really liked, if I maybe cut this up a little bit and kind of found a good spot for everything to live in. This is definitely not a super good looking timeline right here, but just kind of bear with me for a moment. I'm going to cut this off too and delete that. So now I have a couple clips that are encapsulated within my timeline 2. I can highlight everything, go up here to edit, and then copy, and then go over here to my timeline 1. It'll switch back for me, and then place my playhead and go here to edit and then paste. And that pastes all that information directly as I had it in my timeline 2 into my timeline 1. So really, really cool thing that you can do with stacked timelines. It's an awesome feature. The last thing that you can do with it, and I hope I haven't overwhelmed you yet, but the last thing that you can do with it is you can actually drag timelines into other timelines. So for instance, if I grab this timeline 2 right here, I can just drag this into my timeline 1, and now my timeline 2 is living inside my timeline 1. I'm sorry, I'm saying timeline so much. This is crazy. But basically, this is going to be reflective of any changes that I make in this other sequence. So for instance, if I deleted this clip, let's just say I deleted that one. Now, you'll notice that I don't have any information right here because it is reflecting whatever is in that second sequence that I made, that second timeline. So that is basically my comprehensive study on the stacked timelines view. It's really cool, and a lot of different editors have a very similar type of system that they work with. They all have some kind of like stacked timeline view. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and delete this and go back to my timeline view options. And the rest of these, if I zoom in here, the rest of these are basically just different view options for video and audio height. I can increase my video height, increase my audio height. Of course, I can do this per track. Sometimes it is nice to be able to do it over here just on your slider. And then these are different view options. So this one right here will just show me the first frame and the last frame of the video that I'm working with per clip. This one that I was on earlier will show me as many frames as it can cram in there. And then this one will show me basically no frames. But this view right here is really, really great for if you have a huge timeline that you're working with, maybe like a 30-minute episodic series or something like that. So those are the timeline view options. Moving on, we have, I'm going to skip bookmarks for now because they're kind of inconsequential compared to markers. I like markers a lot more. Basically, markers can be used, if I turn this back here, basically markers can be used to mark certain spots in your timeline, maybe for later editing revisions. So if I click a marker right here, notice it put down this blue marker. If I double click on it, you can change, of course, the color of it, change the name, change the notes. This is really good if you're working in a collaborative environment where multiple people are editing on the same project. Moving on, like I said, I'm going to skip bookmarkers for now. This button right here will lock everything, so I can use that to lock pretty much everything. The linked selection button is very handy, so if I turn off linked selection, you'll notice that whenever I select my video, it is no longer selecting the audio that goes along with that video. And that is because I have turned off my linked selection. If I turn it back on, now whenever I click on my video, it is also selecting the audio that came along with the video. The magnet tool or the snapping tool is really handy. This is another one that I have programmed into my keyboard because I turn it on and I turn it off a lot. With my snapping tool turned on, just engaging it for now, if I move this clip around, notice how it kind of gets to a point and then it snaps directly to the edge of the other clip. That is the function that is referred to as snapping, and it's referred to as snapping in pretty much all nonlinear editing systems like this one. Whereas if I turn this off, I now have free reign to just kind of cut into any video that I might want freely without having to worry about it snapping directly to any of the editing points that I would be working with otherwise. And like I said, I do have this one programmed into my keyboard personally. Usually it's the keyboard shortcut S or N. So either of those two will either turn it on or turn it off, depending on which editing system you have available to you. I am going to skip these buttons right here. They're just not super consequential to what we'll be working with today. I might do another video on these specifically, but for now I'm going to leave them be. And I'm just going to come over here to the last four of these. This right here is my blade tool, so this just allows me to cut the video wherever I want to. So with my blade tool selected, I can now chop this video up, and now all of these are independent clips all on their own. This one, the dynamic trim mode slip tool, This one, the dynamic trim slip mode tool, I'm not going to use for now. I'm not going to really go into it. Again, that might be something I come back to in an even more advanced class because it's just a little bit kind of interesting and a little bit more complex the way that it actually works. And honestly, I don't find a whole lot of use for that tool in particular. And I'm going to skip the trim edit mode tool as well. Just for right now, I am going to come back to it in like a minute or two. But before I do that, I want to cover the selection tool really quick. So the selection tool is the tool that I've been using basically this entire video long. It just allows you to manipulate clips, move them around as much as you would like to, move them up, move them down. Any of these points where the clip ends, I can trim it back or trim it out depending on what I want. So that is the selection mode tool. The last tool, the one that I just spoke of, is the trim edit mode tool. So if I select it, now I have access to a couple different type of functionalities that it brings. So for instance, let's just say Kaylee reaches in and she grabs one of these little flowers right here, but it's kind of happening during an awkward time, like the video is fading out and I don't feel like it's quite in a good spot. So if I wanted to, I could just select right here and I could actually move my video back so that now when I play this, that happens in a much more natural time. And I liked that pretty well. I'm actually going to move it back just a little bit more. So stop it. So let's just say I want to trim this clip up just a little bit. So what I would normally have to do is trim it like that and then move it backwards. What I can do with my trim edit mode tool with it selected is I can just click right here and then it's actually deleting that space for me as I trim along with it, which is really cool. So now that we've done all this, what happens now? Well, we need to export this video. And to do that, we would actually go over here to the Delivery tab. Now, if you remember from the basic editing class, the cut page actually has a quick export function right here. So if I click that, it brings it up to go to YouTube, Vimeo, or H.264 or H.265. I'm going to cancel out of that because if I go over here, so here's my full sequence here. In my timeline. Now the delivery tab is awesome because it gives you tons of different ways to deliver your video. So of course up here we can go straight to YouTube, we can go straight to Vimeo, we also have the H.264, H.265, we have a Premiere XML as well as a Final Cut Pro 7 XML, and you can also go to Pro Tools as an XML, which is awesome. It's just such a good function for transferring this project between different editing systems. But let's just go ahead and leave it on custom. We can of course name this guy if we want to. Let's just name it Tulsa with Kaylee, and maybe just call it draft. I always like to call my videos draft. And then it wants a location, of course. I'm going to click browse, and I'm going to just dump it into the videos folder right there. And then of course we have tons of different options for encoding this video in different ways. So usually what you'll want to do, especially if you're on Mac, sometimes on Windows you might use MP4, but if you're on Mac you usually want to do it in QuickTime. You can leave the codec on H.264. If you aren't familiar with H.264, H.264 is basically just the standard kind of encoding wrapper that most editing softwares export to, and it's also something that both Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, pretty much everything accepts H.264 type videos. And now that I've done that, all I really have to do now is add it to my render queue and then start my queue up. So to do that, I'm just going to click add to render queue, and it pops it over here. This is my render queue. You can stack up as many projects in this render queue as you want to, and then you can set them all to render simultaneously, basically. So that is it for the Intro to Resolve class. Thank you so much for tuning in. This will be a continuing series, so keep updated, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and ring the bell because we are going to be rolling out some more DaVinci Resolve tutorials in the coming weeks. So yeah, keep your eye out for that. Thank you again so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.